with animal genetic resource guidelines. Regulate animal genetic resources, but the finding indicates it's clearly, therefore, enforcement is a challenge. These findings agrees with Mahonge, who asserts that the law enforcement may become indiscriminate crossbreeding. Crossbreeding, I mean using the local chicken with exotic chicken, which compromise the diversity of the existing local chicken. Also, reviewing the institutions like the Tanzania Livestock Modernization Initiative, it attributes low genetic potential of animal genetic resources on production perspective. So its gap is on the fact that it neglects other genetic factors which can be formed under the local animal genetic resources, like, for example, ability to the resilience to the harsh environment. So, according to the focus group discussion findings, farmers affirmed that even within the local animal genetic resources, like local chickens, you can find potential resources that can actually perform better under the existing or changing conditions, including climate change and diseases. So similar findings are in agreement with PADI, who reported that selection within the same local chicken flocks can increase productivity and enhance conservation in their natural habitat. The third theme is on animal health services. The FGD findings revealed number of chicken lack limited veterinary extension services, which contributes to the loss of the chickens. So, according to the review of the institution section 2.1.4 of the livestock sector development strategy, it clearly indicates the government effort to reduce the losses, especially the disease of economic significance, which is Newcastle disease vaccine, through the intervention of the programs, the DADIPS and PADEP. So under this, there is an evidence on the study findings as pointed out by Comba that Newcastle disease outbreak in the Southern Highlands in Linden and Tuar evidenced protection of 73% of local chicken sampled in the regions. So stakeholder coordination, the theme actually highlights two key points around the animal genetic resource in terms of its scope is limited to research instead of including other stakeholders like farmers and others in the value chain. But the fifth theme was on the social cultural use of local chicken, which under this, the findings, the focus group discussion findings expressed that the social cultural factors are incentives which can be relevant in conservation of local chicken genetic resources. These include the traditional healing, traditional sacrifice, beliefs such as, local chicken are considered organic, which can be a market incentive and can be sold at a higher value. Also the informal gift. So, under conclusion and the recommendation, the study found that sustainable local chicken genetic resources conservation is a function of three attributes: the interplay of formal and informal institutions, but also implementation of good improved chicken husbandry practices in favor of local chicken, but as well as it's not biased to the government alone. So the whole stakeholder coordination and involvement is key to ensure the conservation is achieved. But it also highlights challenges, which is basically lack of clear focus on animal genetic resource conservation. And this is, I'm referring to the lack of the genetic resource breeding policy. Limited also financial resources, which is, as I prescribed before is also only limited, the resources is only limited to the large animal conservation. But also the unregulated chicken-based interventions, which are interested to production. The interest is on productions rather than looking at conserving the resources. So I would recommend that the government should reassess the existing institutions and improve them to reflect animal genetic resource conservation, but also it should strive to formulate animal breeding policy, but also promote social cultural practices to enhance local chicken genetic resource conservation. So all in all, these recommendations should be harmonized through all stakeholders' efforts towards local chicken genetic resource conservation. Should not be just the government. So that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And we have now the third presentation from Kinanda. Hope you are ready. The floor is yours.
On the occurrence and management of rusty and granite leaf spot disease in different agroecological zones of Mtwara region. Outline of my presentation will cover from introduction to conclusion. Introduction. Rusty and leaf spot disease are important constraints of the granite production in Mtwara. These diseases used to affect the photosynthetic part of the crop, hence the crop would not yield as much. For example, a leaf spot alone can cause. So granite productivity in Tanzania is low compared with the global average productivity. Mtwara has low average granite productivity. The study aims at establishing farmers' viewpoints on occurrence and management measures against fungal disease in Mtwara region. The problem statements. The global production average of granates is current at 1,655 kg per hectare, while in Tanzania the average yield is 909.2 kg per hectare. The average yield in Mtwara region is 650 kg per hectare. Rusted leaf spots are among the common reported economic important disease of granates in Mtwara. Output from this study are expected to improve the livelihoods of granite farmers through raised production per unit area. Overall objective is to improve granite productivity in Mtwara region through proper management of rust and the granite leaf spot disease. The specific objective is to determine occurrence and the management of rust and the granite leaf spot disease in different ecological zones of Mtwara region. Hypothesis. Number one is granite rust and leaf spot disease occurrence varies among the two agroecological zones due to difference in climatical conditions. Difference in agroecological zones govern the granite farm size and the productivity. Awareness to rust and the leaf spot disease does not depend on agroecological zones. Farmers' perceptions on granite rust and the leaf spot diseases are not influenced by agroecological zones. Granite rust and the leaf spot disease management does not vary in the two agroecological zones. Material and methods. Starting with the start site, the study was conducted in two agroecological zones of Mtwara region, which is a coastal zone and eastern plateau and mountain block zone. The survey was conducted in 5 wards of each of the two zones. The eastern plateau and the mountain block zone is located between 38 and 39 while the coastal zone is located between 39 and 40 east of Greenwich. The region is located between 10 and 11 south of Equator. This was my start area. The pale purple designated C2 is the coastal zone. This is the Indian zone, then in coastal zone, and this one with the pale green is the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zone. Sampling design, a purposive and a simple random sampling was applied. The sample size was determined based on Fisher et al. The final sample of 200 households was within the required range according to cartoon. Occurrence of garnet rust and the leaf spot disease. A quadrat was thrown at a starting point for each field and walked in a zigzag path. From each quadrat, 5 plants were assessed for disease severity and incidence. Garnet rust and leaf spot disease severity were determined as a Pagakip rating scale. Farmers' awareness level to garnet rust and leaf spot was examined based on 0 to 100 scores, whereby 20 to 49 were categorized as low, then 50 and above as high. Data analysis were done whereby disease incidence were calculated as it is seen in the formula infected plants or total number of plants times 100, while disease severity were the summation of the number of plants within a certain score times the scores over 9 times number of plants within the quadrant times 100. Results: farm size, productivity, and awareness on folio fungal disease affecting granite productivity in Mpara, in 2 agroecological zones of Mpara region. In case of farm size, granite productivity, higher area were in the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zones, while small size was in the coastal zone. Similar to the productivity, high productivity revealed in the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zones in 2 years based question. Rust, there was significant higher awareness on rust disease, whereby in the coastal zone, more people were aware on the rust disease. Incidence and the severity of garnet folio disease in 2 agroecological zones of Mpara region. Disease incidence and the severity, early leaf spots and the rusty were more severe in the Eastern Plateau and Mountain Block zone, as we can see there early leaf spots and the rust severity and incidence were relatively higher in the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zone, while the late leaf spots incidence and severity were relatively higher in the coastal zone. Agricultural practice used for management of garnet rust and leaf spot disease in Mpara agroecological zones. Intercropping with tubers and legumes were relatively higher in the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zone. Similarly, the usage of certified seed and the residue control through burning of garnet residues were relatively higher in the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Block zone, while conventional tillage and removing of volunteer plants before sowing were relatively higher in the coastal zone. Discussion: farm size and productivity. Farm size influences decision of smallholder farmers to adopt agricultural innovation for crop protection and the choice of variety for higher yields. Similar results were in line with SUA, whereby in the Eastern Plateau, where people have higher lengths, higher farm size, had a higher yield compared to those in the coastal zone. So this shows the connectivity of farm size and willingness of the farmers to invest more in disease management. Farmer awareness of diseases affecting groundnuts. Majority of farmers in the coastal zone were able to identify plants with rust and red leaf spot disease than in the eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone. However, the farmers in the coastal zone had a shortage of knowledge on disease management strategies. Disease incidence and severity. Higher prevalence of rust disease in the eastern plateau and mountain broke zone could be attributed to low management of volunteer plants, as rust is one of the pathogens that will mainly survive through the life plant. So without managing the volunteer plants, there will be easier transmission of rust from the previous season to the next one. Higher incidence and severity of rust in eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone can be ascribed to the pathogen area where the area cultivated, since can be traveled through winds to the late infected plant in the other zone. Higher prevalence of early leaf spots in the eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone may be attributed to poor management of volunteer plants and zero tillage practice adopted by majority of farmers. Disease management practice. Intercropping decreases early leaf spots and late leaf spot disease occurring by making barriers to pathogens dispersal from infected hosts to healthy one. Our results correspond to the authors who ascribed this start. Conventional tillage creates a soil layer that is a physical barrier that prevents fungal inoculum from coming into contact with new growing plants. This will bring us the reason why in the eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone has higher prevalence of early leaf spot, since people in the eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone does not, majority of them does not cultivate by turning out the soil. Rather, they cultivate, they just plant in zero tillage. So the residues from the previous season are left on the surface. Hence, when it rains, the splashing water will carry out the early leaf spots to the tender leaves of the new grown groundnuts, and hence higher infection of early leaf spot. Host resistance is an important aspect of managing groundnut fungal disease. As conclusion and recommendation, the study views that majority of groundnut farmers had inadequate knowledge on fungal disease affecting groundnut fields. Groundnut rust and leaf spot disease occurrence were observed in all agroecological. However, rust and early leaf spots were predominant in eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone, while late leaf spots were largely in the coastal zone. As I said, the early leaf spot and the rust are associated. The early leaf spot are associated with zero tillage, and the rust is associated with leftovers of the volunteer plant. Intercropping groundnuts with tubers and legumes, usage of certified seeds, and management of crop residue used by majority in the eastern plateau and the mountain broke zone. This may account for why the late leaf spots disease is low in the zone. Dissemination, removal volunteer plant before sowing and the conventional tillage were adopted by majority of farmers in the coastal zone, and this may account for why rust disease is not predominant in the coastal zone, since many farmers revealed that they used to remove the volunteer plant before the new season of growing. So, by concluding, I can say that dissemination of knowledge on rust and leaf spot disease management to the farmers would be the best option towards improved groundnuts productivity in Mtwara region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And may I call upon Susan? And also I would request Lazaro to serve as a rapporteur for this presentation, please.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Susan Machera. I'll be presenting this paper of relationship between plant-parasitic nematodes, arbusca mycorrhiza fungi, and soil characteristics of clover fields in the Sambara Mountains. This is my outline of the presentation, which will start from introduction until conclusion recommendation. As we all know, clove is one of the metaspices grown in Sambara Mountain, and it's mostly cultivated for its flower buds, and it's used for essential oils, pharmaceuticals, food and beverage industries, and also source of income to smallholder farmers. In spite of its economic importance, it's still under very low production, from 360 kilograms per hectare to its potential production of 600 kilograms per hectare. As in the Sambara Mountain, the recent problem now is most of the clove trees are growing at a very mature stage, which is from 10 to 20 years. Within that stage is where this production is supposed to be exhibited, and it is highly constrained by the drying and wilting of those, constrained by poor agronomic practices, disease, and insect pests, including the plant-parasitic nematodes. However, the climate-smart practices have been introduced to combat these diseases, especially the plant-parasitic nematodes. The problem statement: these plant-parasitic nematodes are microscopic in nature and they are found within the soil, since they are known to cause up to 100% crop loss. And since they are not seen and the infections is not well known by farmers, and their symptoms are likely to be characterized by other pathogens, or like other seen pathogens like stunted growth, severe wilting, whereby severe wilting, stunted growth can be seen by other pathogens, but it's very minor to see someone to recommend like it's plant-parasitic nematodes. Since they are soil organisms, many people will go for above ground symptoms to relate like leaf spots, wilting by other abiotic and biotic factors. Since they are soil-borne organisms, nematicides have been used, which are not very good enough, because when they are applied, they destroy other soil microorganisms, not only nematodes. However, there's been a new innovative strategies, such as the use of biological organisms such as arbusca mycorrhiza fungi. These fungi form symbiotic. This mycorrhiza fungi form obligate mutualistic symbiotic with plants, whereby they interact with each other, and they are eco-friendly and sustainable for the management of plant-parasitic nematodes. As seen in the figure below, since these AMF are within the soil roots, they form natural symbiosis with plants. As seen in the figure, the first plant has no hypha. These AMF form hypha extensions. These hypha extensions limit entry of pathogens, diseases from within the soil, especially the nematodes. You can see the nematodes in the first picture, they can enter directly in the root without hyphae, but in the second picture, through the presence of AMF, the penetration of organisms, destructive organisms, is very high. So they will first encounter the hyphae. Until they reach the plants, they will decrease rate of infection. So my research objective in this paper were to identify the plant-parasitic nematodes found within the clove fields in the arbusca mycorrhiza fungi, then establish the association, then know the influence of these organisms in both agricultural practices, in their soil communities and soil properties. So this study was done in Amman Nature Reserve. In samples were seen. As seen in the picture below, the first step is the extraction of plant parasitic nematodes, and second is the staining of roots. So this is whereby after collecting the soil samples from Sambara Mountain, I extracted them, I isolated the AMF, then I isolated the PPN and AMF root colonization. This is the statistical analysis. It was mostly based in calculating the frequency of occurrence, relative abundance, and spore density. And last on, did Pearson correlation to see if there's any relationship between the agricultural practices. As the results are seen, occurrence of plant parasitic nematodes. So in the clover fields, 24 plant parasitic nematodes were identified, and this is the graph showing their prevalence and abundance. And the prevalence and abundance of these graphs is, the nematodes located in these parts indicate that they were prevalent enough, but some were abundant and others were not abundant. The abundant ones were still like Rotlenchus, Helicobacter were more abundant in both fields, and the most destructive ones, Moedogai, was abundant, but was frequent, but not abundant. And also, AMF were also collected in the Sambara Mountains, whereby 10 genera were observed, and the most observed genera were Glomus, Gigaspora, and Aquaspora in both practices. However, for a plant to be known to be colonized by AMF, it needs to have at least 3 structural features. It needs to have hypha, abscule, which is the main, and vesicles. So if these structures are present in your roots, it indicates that this carafu, this clove tree, is characterized with AMF colonization. And these are some of the pictures of soil microorganisms obtained from the soil. As for plant parasitic nematodes, they are both microscopic. So even the infections had to be detected by farmers. For plant parasitic, their features are indicated as below, and the identification in both species is very different. So as you can see, there's Syphinema, Helicobacter, Chrysonema, and Schizonema, and for AMF spores, there's Glomus, Aquaspora, and Gigaspora, as seen in the pictures below. And when it comes to the association, there was association between PPN abundance and AMF in both agricultural practices. However, there was no relationship between the AMF and PPN. As we all know, both AMF and PPN are soil microorganisms, and they both interact within one plant. And they both compete for the same space, same nutrients, same everything in the same plant. And also there was no any significant correlation between AMF and any of the soil properties and PPN abundance. However, there was positive correlation between PPN abundance and total nitrogen. Discussion. So among the plant parasitic nematodes obtained, 5 of them from our field samples are recorded among one of the most 10 dangerous plant parasitic nematodes over the world. And when it comes to the most abundant species in all fields, Rotlenchus, since clove is a spice crop, the same species was reported in other spices such as turmeric and ginger to be one of the most abundant, frequent, and destructive nematodes in their crops. And when it comes to Glomus as the beneficial fungi in controlling these nematodes, Glomus species was the most general, followed by Aquaspora, Gigaspora, and Scutelospora, whereby Chaudhary et al. 2010 reported the same genera to be dominant in their study. This study also showed that people and AMF are highly influenced by agricultural practices and the host plants. However, these agricultural practices were different, but it indicated that both practices influence both species. And the current findings in this study reveals that soil properties had no association with AMF abundance. It's also reported by Manoharan et al. The same. And there was also no insignificant AMF nematode interaction observed in this study as in agreement with Perigon et al. For AMF and nematode interaction to occur, it has to be negative, positive, or nil. So if it's negative in case, it means that the AMF, the nematodes, can distract the AMF, which is very bad. But if the AMF would be positive, it would indicate that the AMF, this Abscomycorrhiza fungi hypha, limited the destruction of these nematodes, which may lower their population, may lower damage in entry of them to the right part of the plant. So in conclusion of this study, as it was done in Sambara Mountain, it indicated that both plant parasitic nematodes and AMF spores were present in all crop fields, regardless of their distribution pattern, regardless of the cultural practices, or soil properties or location, which the 30 fields were sampled. And also, these agricultural practices introduced the CSN and CSA. They both influence AMF and plant what drives these communities, meaning the abscules, Mycorrhiza fungi, and the PPA. And to know more if these drivers are influenced by climate change or what influences these species to be present in the flow fields of Eastern Sahara Mountains. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. Now it's time for questions. We shall have maybe 2 rounds of questions. Tell us the presenter whom your question is being targeted. So, welcome for the question.
And Prof. Pablo, as the people prepare to answer questions, we would like these people to mount their slides for the next session. Is Mongi around? Mongi? Dosi? Katib? Bakari?
Are you around?
Eliziacha?
I'm here.
Faith Mabiki?
Yeah, I'm online. Thank you.
No, wait. We'll tell you when to present, not now. We're just checking.
Yes, I'm online. I can
Furara
hear.
Rashidi? Furara Rashidi? Klaus? Okay, so the people of Just Code, please mount your slide so that we can move fast. Thank you. Okay, Mohammed, are you around? Mohammed Haji? Susanna Nyanda? Okay, please, Professor.
On her behalf, I'm presenting on her behalf.
Okay. Susanna Nyanda.
Okay.
So, for those who have questions, please raise your
Okay,
hand so that
questions?
I can give you the mic.
Questions are welcome.
Who has a question?
Okay. Okay. Welcome.
Thanks for presenter for bringing in very impressive work. I have a question to the first presenter, Mwemezi. I would like to know whether there have been any intervention that looks at the Tinea sorium problem in human and pigs at the same thank you. At the same, in human and pigs at the same time, and what were the situation? The second question goes to the second presenter, Bwana Capella. I'm very much impressed with the findings, especially on the indiscriminate crossbreeding in local chicken. This problem is not only on local chicken, but also in other animals. He has made a very good recommendation on the formulation of the animal breeding policy. I would like to suggest that maybe before waiting for this policy, he could make an inventory of how big the problem is, not only in chicken, in other small animals which farmers can easily sneak across the borders. We have an example of goats and others. We have initiative on protection of the pare goats. Maybe he can bank on these efforts and make a small inventory, make a small policy brief which can speed up the process. The third question goes to the third presenter, Ndugu Kinanda. In the study, I think the description of the study area needed to be more focused on the attitude so that the study can be applicable across the world. Because if you say east or mountain, east could be east from where? We have East Coast Zone, mountain. What I see here, I think is an attitude thing. Could be influencing the finding which he is presenting. And lastly, I'm not a botanist, so I would like to know what are the volunteer plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon.
Thank you. Question go to last presenter. Is a farmer interested to know if everything goes well? How can I use it farm level? How can I use your research output at the farm level?
My question goes to the first presenter, Mwebezi. He said that his findings are a bit contradictory. Like financial, it was very most cost effective, but the findings are good for health. So my question is, as we know, the rural farmers are very much involved in livestock keeping. How is these findings applicable to these farmers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Like I said, go to the first presenter. He mentioned somewhere that Tanzania is lagging behind in terms of animal genetic resource conservation. I just wondering, is this comparison with respect to maybe to East Africa? Did you refer to East Africa or to the world? And the second part, what do you think Tanzania has been this far behind?
Thank you very much. Now, women, I think you have the most questions, and perhaps why not start with you? Anyway, I know you wish to pronounce, but perhaps go to the point that's easier.
Two questions for me. One from Dr. Ngode. If there was any intervention on humans and pigs concurrently, as far as I know, there's none. What I know is there's been an intervention on humans, particularly on school children who were treated with transplanted, specifically to control schistosomiasis. And apparently, the drug also has an effect on tinea solia. So they thought that would also be an important intervention to control Tinea. But while that was going on, there was no intervention on pigs, so that was the only intervention. And the effects were the intervention significantly reduced prevalence in human beings and a little bit on pigs. But we thought that wouldn't be sustainable because there was no any intervention on pigs. For the second question, financial versus health benefits, implication to the farmers. Yeah, I think the farmers should be educated in a way that they understand that the disease has an effect on their health. Not only that, if they treat their pigs, they get more money, because not just about the money, it's about their health. So they should be educated to understand that the disease has an effect not only on their economies, which is not the case as we've seen, but basically on their health. So that is the implication to the farmers. But most importantly, the implication for this is for the government. Like I said before, the government should take this into consideration because it's the public health issue. And so probably, they, like I said, to provide some subsidies for the drugs and the vaccine, so that these tools can be available to the farmers at affordable prices. Thank you.
The last question about East Africa, where it was US, okay. Please.
Thank you for the good questions. Perhaps I will start with the last question regarding the lagging behind. Tanzania is lagging behind in terms of animal genetic resource conservation. First of all, in my first phase presentation, I said I'm using animal genetic resource conservation synonymously with local chicken genetic resource conservation because it all refers to animals. So it is lagging behind in terms of Tanzania is critically focused on large animals. It is biased. And one of my slides I mentioned, we have the infrastructures like the National Artificial Insemination Center. Under my problem statement, there is National Artificial Insemination Center as well as the Tanzania Livestock Multiplication Units. All these are focused or concentrated on large animals. So when looking on the small livestock like chicken, there is nothing in terms of infrastructures well established like that. You mentioned about how do I refer this, how does it fare with East Africa or the world. My basis for this paper was guided by the Interlaken Declaration, which was established in year 2007 in Switzerland. And this conservation and the final aspect to capacitate stakeholders and strengthen institutions. So that is at that level. So lagging behind is at that level. Coming back to the first question regarding indiscriminate crossbreeding, the focus of this study is mainly when reviewing the institutions, the rules of the game is at national level. So when referring to them, you are referring to the nation. But the actual practice on how are these, how does it fare was Igunga district was picked to see how it is working. So in this regard, I will take your comment regarding how the parent goats were inventoried. So perhaps I will see how I can integrate the inventorization of the local chicken into my study in the local area. The problem is big. The crossbreeding in my study I was referring to, in the main document, there is a pressure because the district is under of the district in Tabora region, it has a low population. So the district is putting up initiatives or interventions to promote productivity. In the cause, it leads to, it threatens the erosion of the resources. So the problem is big because procedures, the crossbreeding is unguided, it is unregulated. So thank you, I'll have to work on that to see how I can integrate the inventorization.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ngode, for your concern on why I concentrated on the zone, that is Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Brook Zone and the Coastal Zone. The Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Brook Zone has different climatical condition from the Coastal Zone in terms of temperature, relative humidity, soil, also the altitudes between these two zones are different. For example, the Eastern Plateau and the Mountain Brook Zone lies between 200 and 500 meters above the sea level, while the coastal zone lies is less between 500 meters above the sea level. So in my main document, those issues concerning the difference of two zones are indicated. But in my presentation, due to the number of slides, so I didn't indicate. Sorry for that. And in the case of volunteer plants, we say these are the plants that grows after harvest. When one harvest, for example, granules, as one harvest, some nuts may remain within the soil. If the moisture allows, it will grow later on. It will germinate and grow. Once it grows, those pathogens of rust have ability to survive for almost maximum is 2 months. So if it has grown out, it will easier be carried to this live plant, as the rust cannot be perenniate to the next season under rainfed. Since under rainfed, example in Mtwara, rain ends in May. Up to November, another rain. So rust cannot perenniate at the meat, cannot survive at the meat. So it will require a plant that will carry it to the next season. Different from early and leaf spot, which can perenniate, they are necrophic, meaning that they can live in the live plant and thereafter they are able to come out and live in the coming season with the new grown plant. So volunteer plants can carry all of these 3 diseases: rust disease, early leaf spots, and late leaf spot. But the main issue is on rust. Since rust cutting of
Thank you. As asked by the farmer, like my research outputs. What my research output is not in your farm, as you use the article mycorrhiza fungi, it creates hyphae. The hyphae created extends within your roots, collects all nutrients, prevents all your diseases, and how you can culture it is very simple. You collect your plants containing the apicules, and the good thing, these apical mycorrhiza fungi, they are present in 80% of the crop plants. However, since many people are not aware of them, through these conventional tillage practices, they tend to reduce the hyphae practices by digging, by doing different conventional tillage practices. So, but if you practice organic farming, you can be able to capture all the AML spores and culture them and put them in your farm instead of using local fertilizers, instead of using fertilizers, using pesticides. You can only utilize these AML spores to control diseases in your farm, and that will be a good thing because it will reduce your cost of production in the field. Have I answered your question?
I think we're done with the questions, and let me give this mic to Professor Nyarucha to Yeah, you failed.
So, thank you very much for your attention.
So we are going to start with the Zoom presentations and then go to the live presentations.
Should we then? Hello?
Good morning. Meeting delegates who are with us virtually, we are starting with the second session. It's a great honor to invite Dr. Fes Mabiki from Sokoine University of Agriculture to take us to the presentation that she has prepared. Fes, are you with us?
Yes, I hear. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Very much. I'm trying to share the script, the slides. I hope it is working for you. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to present on behalf of Dr. Susan Nyanda, who is not well, and because I'm part of the research team and the paper team, I'm going to present on her behalf. She is more competent on this area than me, but here it goes. I'm going to present the paper on scientific evidence for policy making, a missing link in higher learning institution, and good morning again.
Morning.
I acknowledge the sponsorship and funding assistance from the AFIDEP, who sponsored the work that I'm presenting, the Sokoine University of Agriculture, who supported this to a large and big extent, and part. My outline will be as shown. I captured this and I just thought that it's worthy showing it. And this is a statement paraphrased from a bigger visit of our minister, and he was insisting, that is written in Swahili, it's a paraphrase, and you can see it, and the paraphrase says, tunataka nchi yetu ifike mahali tafiti iwe ndio mkombozi wa taifa hili. Sasa vyuo tuache mazoea ya kutunza majarida na matokeo ya tafiti kwenye makabati. Tafiti zipo nyingi, lakini zipo kwenye makabati tu. Huo sio utamaduni nzuri. As our Prime Minister was speaking that, we were holding a launching event of the Sokoine Memorial at SUA. The same said in different words by the Minister for Agriculture to us, the same said to us by the District Commissioner, and this makes the basis of this presentation. It is very evident that we need evidence in decision making, and as said by one of the plenary session presenters yesterday, the major role of the higher learning institutions are to provide evidence, among others. In our team, and as we were trying to see and do the review, made us to do an action research, which is presented in this document. We also realize that while the policymakers are thinking on where to get the quick evidence and for decision making, Also, the academia is also seeking, is having some challenges on how to see where to solve a problem. These are among the things that we thought that there is a problem in between, and if that one is solved, then we are going to have a cheaper access to the policy makers and contribute in one way or another. Our major question was that why there is a limited utilization of scientific evidence from higher learning institutions for policy making in Tanzania. We had 3 specific objectives, and as shown, we wanted to establish what are the levels of awareness on evidence-informed decision among researchers, especially in higher learning institutions. We also wanted to assess the capacity of researchers to disseminate research. We also wanted to examine the coordination of the higher learning institutions in contributing to evidence-informed decision-making in Tanzania. We had 3 research questions which correlates with our specific objectives as shown. But as I said earlier, this was an action-oriented research, and through it we conducted 2 important events, and from there we got our data. One, we conducted a training workshop on evidence-informed decision-making last year in September, and then it was followed by a policy dialogue, which was a national dialogue. And from these 2 events, we could gather stakeholders, important informers, of which we could get information. Before the events, we ran a pre-training survey, and you will see the results very soon. But also we collected the data through the audio-visual, the flip chart, the consensus building exercises, and also we processed the data, we transcribed the data and coded them. We have presented them in form of the descriptive statistics, and also we did thematic analysis. If you allow me, the results from the first objective arranged consecutively from one after the other. On the levels of awareness of EIDM among researchers, we realized that there was a limited awareness of evidence-informed decision concepts among researchers. When I talk of researchers, I know that the majority of us are researchers, and we will, as I said earlier, I was focusing on the higher learning institutions. We realized that the awareness was limited. And in that sense, from our analysis, we realized that most of the time when the researchers are doing some reviews and everything, are on to get some information in order to build up on problems. When they are doing research and reviews, they are actually doing it for training purposes and research purposes. Limited was done in order that you contribute into policy making. We also realized that there was a limited capacity in communicating scientific data and research data. The same was on repackaging the findings in such a way that the policy makers could capture easily and take them into, incorporate them into development strategies in our country. The coordination of a higher learning institution in contributing to evidence-informed decision-making in the country, we also found that there was a lack of clear platform for synthesizing and sharing research. We should note that in order that the information, scientific information, be packed to a person who is not scientific, is working with a maybe directly to the public, it needs some sort of synthesis. So there was a lack of a clear platform for synthesizing research data in order that policymakers could grasp and share it. Also, we realized that limited government funding limited the contribution of higher learning institutions to evidence-informed decision making. Also, we also realized that the policy environment was a limitation. For example, NBS was one of the major, discussant during the policy dialogue, and we know that NBS is mandated for national official statistics. But it was clearly evident that most of the data generated in higher learning institutions are termed as unofficial, and they are not of very useful nature to be used by the National Bureau of Statistics. That was one of the findings that actually posed a limited policy environment for higher learning institutions to contribute to the policies. On the other hand, if you are looking at this table, this was one of the surveys that was done. As I said, the survey matched the training. And here we asked three important things as cycle. Most of the respondents indicated that there were no evidence synthesis center or unit charged with synthesizing the research done by the higher learning institutions in order that they could be translated in a good way to be communicated to the policymakers. There was also limited, if you can see, only 25% indicating that there were some sort of programs in the universities that could give capacity of researchers to communicate research, but also there were no formal career progression, especially to enable the translation of the research data, the scientific data generated in higher learning institutions in order to give advantage to the policymakers. If I discuss only doing literature review for research purposes is not enough. In order to give a policy statement, in order to contribute to a policy for development. Researchers and policymakers are two separate communities. That's what you can see. As I said earlier, the policymakers are thinking on their own, depending from the capacity of the researchers, and the researchers are also have limited knowledge to reach the policymakers. So these two communities are separate, but they need to be joined in order that we contribute to our country's development through our research data. The representation of professionals in government technical working groups looks to be not very enough to the policymakers so that they can make a quick uptake of the research data. So something more needs to be done. In conclusion, I can say that the evidence synthesis capacity of researchers, policy environment, and government funding still contribute to hinder the good uptake of research data from higher learning institutions to the policy making system. Also, the higher learning institutions still stand a better chance to complement to the National Bureau of Statistics efforts. I recommend that more awareness creation is needed, specifically on the evidence-informed decision making, meaning and how to do it, how to translate the research data we have into a way that can be consumed. Still, the awareness is low and needs to be need to put more effort on that one. Policymakers' involvement should be taken from the foundation of the research when we are doing. But also, we recommend that the government increases funding instead of just depending on the donor funding as we are doing now. The government should increase the funding for research so that researchers could grasp from the problems which are within the nation, and also the policymakers could consume what is needed by the nation. But on the other hand, we have also moved a way ahead because from after we finished this research, we have now put an agenda to the Sovereign University of Agriculture to establish a research finding synthesis unit that will be very helpful to raise awareness, build capacity, and coordinate different units in order that we can put our effort together to communicate to the policy making forum. By this saying, I thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Faith. We got you very well. Please stay with us, and members, reserve your questions with us. Faith, I understand that you have another presentation. Could you please go ahead?
I did it yesterday.
Oh, you did it yesterday?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, again, we are going virtually. I invite Moffat Chawala.
Madam Faith, can you stop sharing the screen, please?
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to make a presentation at this conference. Sincere apologies for connecting late. So I'm presenting a paper on gender differences in indigenous chickens commercialization in and evidence from northwestern Zambia. So that is the outline of my presentation. I'll look at the introduction, the problem statement, the research objectives, the research questions / hypothesis, and the materials and methods, the results, the discussion, and then I conclude and recommend. In the introduction, the subject of smallholder agriculture commercialization and gender disparities are taking center stage in smallholder agriculture development at this course. That's what was observed by Mamburuze and Quincy and Pandoferi in 2010. So most of the studies that have been done have mostly focused on the socio-economic factors as drivers of village chicken commercialization, and they have ignored the role of socio-psychological factors when it comes to the decision-making of farmers. Then the evidence in the extant literature suggests that there is an increasing call for a shift from applying economic models that have been applied to human decision-making to using socio-psychological models. So there is evidence to that extent. Then additionally, when you get to look at the literature, it reveals that the increased commercialization of agriculture leads to increased disadvantaging of women. And as such, I think there's need for us to look at the issues of gender disparities when chickens based on socio-economic and demographics, and given examples of some of those studies, and therefore there's a shortage of studies to ascertain the role of socio-psychological factors when it comes to smallholder farmer decision-making to transition from subsistence to commercial farming. And maybe I can even make an additional point on that aspect. The village chicken, for example, has been touted to have so much potential in terms of commercialization, but the evidence on the ground, or the reality on the ground, is that the majority of the smallholder farmers remain at subsistence and they failed to transition to commercial farming of indigenous chickens. In 2014, OTS and others noted that studies on the adoption of innovations usually ignore the underlying social psychological constructs that will affect farmers when it comes to their decisions as well as behavior, such as intention and perceptions. Then additionally, there are hardly any studies that have considered gender differences regarding the intention of smallholder indigenous chicken farmers to transition from subsistence to commercial scale farming. So in addition to the problem statement, I would just like us I would like to point us to some of the empirical studies that have been conducted on village chicken commercialization. So, for example, Mongoose and others did a study on prospects of village chicken commercialization in Zimbabwe, and their findings was that only about 20% of respondents were commercial producers, and that feed and medicine supplementation was key for improved productivity. So the research gap there is that only socio-economic variables were considered as determinants of village chicken commercialization, and the aspect of social psychological factors was not addressed. Then CI and Masuku in Swaziland also looked at studies looking at factors affecting commercialization of indigenous chicken in Swaziland, and they identified the constraints to commercialization, which are listed in the slide. Again, the research gap there tells us that the social psychological aspects were not the focus of the study. Then again, in Uganda, Ariemu and others looked at the drivers of commercialization, and they also looked at it from the economic perspective, and they did not focus on the social psychological aspects of determining village chicken commercialization. Then also, it's important for us to look at some of the studies that have used the theory of plant behavior, which is one of the theories that is guiding this study. So, for example, Potters and others, they looked at, they used the theory of plant behavior to understand the farmer's intention to adopt improved grasslands, and the results showed that all the three antecedents of the theory of plant behavior were positively and significantly correlated with intention. So the research gap there is that the focus was on large livestock and it wasn't on small livestock, and this study I think will be focusing on small livestock, which are the chickens, the local chickens. Then in China, one did a study to look at the determinants of pesticide application, and again, when we look at the research gap there, it was on crops rather than livestock, and then it was also a cross-sectional study. There was no proof of causality. Then there's also an aspect of the contextual gap. Then lastly, Hanson and others looked at the psychological constructs underlying farmers' decision to diversify or specialize their business. They used the theory of plant behavior quite okay, but again, the issue of livestock was not considered. So having said that, I'll just look at the objectives of this particular study. So the first one was to find out the relationship between the antecedents of scaling tension and scaling up intention itself. Then the next one was to examine the experience of gender differences in commercialization, scaling up intention, and its antecedents. So like I said earlier, this theory is being guided by two. This study is being guided by two theories. The first theory is the theory of plant behavior, and the other theory is the feminism theory. So, according to the theory of plant behavior, it states that the best predictor of behavior is intention, and that the intention is influenced by the attitude towards the behavior, the subjective norms, as well as the perceived behavioral control. So maybe I'll just quickly talk about this model. So according to this model, it says that if, for example, someone has got a high intent to do something, the likelihood that they will do it is high if that intention is high. But then this intention is influenced by one, the attitude towards the behavior. And the attitude towards the behavior talks about the perceived consequences of performing a particular behavior. See, so if, for example, the perceived consequences are favorable, it means that the person is more likely to perform more behavior than when they are negative. Then the subjective norms refers to the social norms or the perceived pressure to perform a particular behavior by the important others. So, for example, someone can perform a behavior because some of the people that are close to approve of them to perform that particular behavior, or they cannot. The successful commercial farmer of village chickens, why can I not also perform village chickens? So those are the subjective norms. Then lastly, the perceived behavioral control refers to the perceived ease or difficulty to perform a particular behavior. So this one refers to what opportunities are there for me to perform this particular behavior. Do I have the skills or resources for me to perform this particular behavior? If the person has got the skills as well as the resources, as well as the opportunities to perform a particular behavior, the likelihood that they'll perform that behavior is going to be high. Then feminist theories, on the other hand, address issues to do with women's subordination to men, how that arose as well as how it's being perpetuated and how it might be changed. The data further goes on to see that feminist theories play a dual role in society, and that is why they guide us to understand gender inequality, and two, as guides to action. So when we take a look at gender inequality, there's no way we can run away from this reality that gender inequality is there. And in agriculture, I think it is evidence, I think, in the literature that there is a lot of disparities when it comes to maybe access to productive resources, where men are said to have more access to productive resources than women. And so that puts women at a disadvantage. So when we're looking at feminism, there are issues to do with the gender gap, and the gender gap is the disparity between women and men, which is as a result of structural forces and cultural influences in society. Then also there is also gender bias in feminism, which looks at those counter-reform dispositions that individuals, groups, organizations place upon women and men in society, and that aspect has got implications for agricultural development. So, for example, maybe women are countering access to be keepers of the home, and so maybe you find that they have a limited role maybe to play when it comes to commercializing smallholder agriculture. So, having said that, we look at the research question of the hypothesis. So, this study has got 5 main hypotheses. The first hypothesis is that attitude towards commercialization and positive influences the intention to engage in practices that enhance commercialization intention of the village chicken. The number 2, there is a positive relationship between the subjective norms and the intention to engage in commercialization practices for the village chicken. Meaning, if a lot of people that are close to a particular farmer approve of their decision of their intention to transition from smallholder from subsistence farming to commercial farming, then they are more likely to do that. Then the third one is that there is a positive relationship between the perceived behavioral control and the intention to engage in commercialization practices that enhance village chicken commercialization. So, like, define perceived behavioral control, that is the perceived ease or difficulty to do something. If someone has got the resources, the opportunity, or the skills to become commercial farmers, then they're more likely to become commercial farmers. Then the last one is male village chicken farmers have higher scaling up intent and disadvantage than female farmers. So when we look at this diagram, which also looks at gender difference, one of the things that I'd like to point out is the circle in the middle or the type of commercialization practices intention. So commercialization practices intention is made up of 4 sub-intentions. So the first one is that there is the intention to improve the management practices. One of the things that has been discovered in village chicken is that management practices are very low. So if our farmers should become commercial farmers, there is need for them to improve management. Then the other aspect in commercialization practices intention is an aspect to do with investment practices. We know very well that village chicken production is a low input system, but there's need for the smallholder farmers also to invest. They want to scale up, or if they want their chickens to be attractive to the market. So there's need for them to invest and have that intention to invest. Then the other aspect in commercialization practices, the intention is the issue. Yeah, it is the issue to do with the marketing. The issue to do with marketing. So there are 3 aspects. The issue to do with marketing. Once they produce, in terms of we did the multi-stage cluster random sampling, and the research, so we had to get 20 from each zone. So the data was collected using a structured questionnaire, and this was a cross-sectional study. And in line with the previous Europe planned behavior studies, all the variables were measured using a 5-point Likert scale. The reliability analysis and checks for normality were done before undertaking an analysis of the data. So quickly, that's just the sample profile of the farmers that took the survey. So in terms of the gender, we can see that there were more females than males that took part in the survey. Then in terms of the age groups, we can see that the majority, I think, of the age groups, I think, are above 41. So meaning the participation of youths, I think, in this venture was a bit low. Then in terms of the education levels, as we can see, the majority, I think, are below junior secondary school. Then in terms of marital status, the majority, I think, were married. The last, the household type, most of the household types were male-headed. Then in terms of reliability analysis, as we can see, all the compounds of, I think, above 0.7, I think, meaning that the measuring scale was reliable. So in terms of the results, we use the correlations assessment to look at the relationship hypothesis, and so these were the bivariate results. So for example, scaling up intent and commercialization intent, the Pearson correlations coefficient was 0.729, and it was significant. So I think we'll go to the summary later where I'll show this, I think, in a summarized form. Then we also did an independent sample test to look at the gender differences aspect, and so when we look at this table, we can see from the t-test for equality of means, we can see that scaling up intent was significant, meaning that there were significant differences between the males and the females when it comes to the scaling up intent. And as we can see in terms of the means for males were higher than the means for females. So this is on the scaling up intention. Then on the commercialization practices intention, again we see that it was significant. Then I also go to the commercialization attitude also was also significant at 0.022. Then subjective norms was not significant, meaning there are no differences as regards to subjective norms. Then the perceived behavioral control was also significant. Then another important aspect from the independent sample test was for us to look at the magnitude of the difference. So we use the eta squared to find, to determine the magnitude of the difference, where those differences were present. So for example, according to Cohen's eta criteria, 0.01 represents a small effect, and 0.06 a moderate effect, and 0.14 a large effect. So in all our cases, I think all that's the hypothesis testing summary. So in terms of hypothesis number one, that attitude towards commercialization policy influences the intention to engage in practices that enhance commercialization intention of village chicken. We can see that the coefficient there is 0.631, and this particular hypothesis was supported. Then the second hypothesis, where that subjective norms are positively related to commercialization practices intention, this one was also supported at 0.276 R. Then the third hypothesis, control and the intention to engage in commercialization practices. This one was also supported with an error of 0. The gender differences on the antecedents as well as scaling up intent. We can see that this one was partially supported because the subjective norms, we found that there were no significant differences. So in terms of the discussions, the results for the hypothesized relationships are all consistent with the results found in similar studies that employ the theory of planned behavior, that the higher the subjective norms, the attitude towards the behavior and the perceived behavioral control, the higher the intention to commercialize. And it is also evident from the results that subjective norms have the weakest relationship, and this finding is consistent with the results from other studies where subjective norm has been said to have the weakest relationship. Then the relationship between the commercialization practice intention and the commercialization scaling up intention is strong, and this is a signal of the importance for the smallholder farmers to embrace the commercialization practice that can help them to scale up. Then lastly, gender differences were also observed with men scoring higher means than female farmers on all fronts except on the subjective norms. So the findings for men are having a more favorable attitude towards commercialization of indigenous chickens and females are consistent with prior studies which show that agriculture commercialization is often associated with a decline in women's control because cash crops usually fall into the male domain, according to Fisher and M. So in conclusion, this study was the first one to apply the theory of planned behavior in the indigenous chicken value chain, and will be employed to show the different relationships that are there between the antecedents of scaling up intention as well as the scaling up intention. The second, the study showed the gap of understanding gender differences among smallholder farmers with regard to social psychological factors of the indigenous chicken value chain. And then in terms of the recommendations, we'd like to recommend that there is need for interventions that would be biased towards women, as it is them that dominate the indigenous chicken value chain. Then ASAN 2014 also observes that the declining livestock productivity in rural areas is due to a large extent the relegation to the background of the contributions of women on the issues of livestock production. Then the other recommendation is that interventions should target enhancing the attitude towards commercialization of indigenous chickens and promote the potential benefits of commercializing the indigenous chickens, especially among the women. Then interventions to control women so that they should find it easy, and there shouldn't be difficulties for them, I think, to transition from subsistence to commercial farming. So meaning issues to do with business development services such as training as well as extension services must be readily available for us to actualize this commercialization potential of village chickens. Must also be encouraged to embrace commercialization practices that can increase their commercialization prospects. Because it's not possible for smallholder farmers to dream of becoming commercial if they do not want to embrace practices to do with management, practices to do with investment, as well as practices to do with marketing. Because ultimately, when we look at commercialization, it has to be looked at from two sides of the coin. The first side of the coin is from the productive side, and the other side of the coin is from the output side or the market participation side. So this is where I end my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Moffat Chawala from Copperbelt University. Please stay with us for question and answer that will follow shortly.
All right, thank you so much.
Dear members, our next speaker is Mohamed Hudzali Haj Lazal from Faculty of Plantation and Agrotechnology, University of Technology, Malaka, Malaysia. Mohamed, are you online?
Moffat, can you stop sharing the screen, please?
Okay.
Mohamed Hudzali from Malaysia. He will be speaking about deep learning application on soil agricultural fertility.
Hello, Zari. Hello?
While we are waiting for other questions, speakers, please, could you respond to the question? We start with Dr. Faith Mabiki.
Thank you very much for the question. I understood that I'm required to give like an explanation on how the policymakers could be involved in our research setup, because I said we are recommending that when we are formulating our research and our projects, we should involve policy makers. I think the national team, which is formulating the 5-year development plan 3, and everyone was like, oh, is this done now? So it was like we were not aware that the policymakers are actually putting together the document for the 5-year development plan of the country that is going for phase 2. And so that's actually where this point originated from. Susan, because it's around, can also add on that. However, on the other hand, as well can get involved in the political forums. Because in the political forums, that's where we meet most of the policy makers. The wabunges, the diwanis, most of the scientists feel like they are not that fit in the community. And so we are missing a point in getting the political forum of the country, because these are the people who are going down to the villages and they are living there every day and they are listening to problems every day. Another good example, if I get a good example, like if I get a problem in Morogoro Municipal, for example, I'm a chemist, and here we are surrounded by most of the industries that maybe are pouring some chemicals in the environment. That is a cry of many people, but I might not hear it if I'm not getting involved with the policymakers. It should be noted that the policymakers includes also the civilians, includes also the politicians and the community in a very complex manner. I don't know if I have responded to it, otherwise I would request the one whom I represented could say more if he hears me.
Thanks, Faith. I think the answer is very elaborate. It's okay. May I invite Mofat Chawala to respond to the question?
All right. Thank you so much for your question. In terms of the attitude of women towards commercialization, if you said it was unfavorable, I think one of the things that can cause that attitude towards commercialization to be unfavorable would be because of the perceived behavioral control. If women, for example, have got problems to market their village chicken, if they don't have the knowledge to market their village chicken, or if they do not have the skills to produce their village chickens at commercial level, that definitely is going to disadvantage them. And that's why I think one of the recommendations we say is need for business development services to be extended to women so that the perceived behavioral control can be improved, so that the perceived ease to commercialize village chicken to be greater than it was. And definitely, if the perceived behavioral control seems to be low, and they think they'll have difficulties to market their village chickens or to produce their village chickens.
If you have a chance, please find time to visit Tanzania. We have some communities where women are dominating the local chicken business, and many are actually not involved with that. I think we can learn from that because that's a huge industry. I won't mention the tribe here, but it's not very far from where the university is.
Okay, no, thank you so much for the invitation. I definitely hope to come through to Sokoni University in Tanzania.
Thank you, thank you. Members, we are lucky to have Mohamed Hadzali Haji Lazali from Malaysia. Mohamed. Hello, Mohamed.
Hello?
Thank you, thank you. Please, You are warmly invited to give us a talk. We are really looking forward to it. Can you go ahead?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, you can hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I can start my Thank you very much to invite me. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Actually, my presentation is. Can you now see my screen?
Yes.
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 Can see my screen now? About development of smart irrigation and drainage system for sustainable agriculture.
Yes, we see.
Okay. Okay. Can see clear? Okay, I go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I am Muhammad Zari bin Haji Razak. Now I attach with, I call it in Malaysia, we have the sabbatical leave. Sabbatical leave means that now I am progressing the sabbatical leave to continue and expand my expertise on agriculture, irrigation and drainage. My supervisor is Professor Kuhalim Suhamid, whereas the second author for this slide. So I hope me and my supervisor will be, that I already sent my CV, most of our CV sent to Projabit. So inshallah, thank you very much Projabit that give us chance to share our study in Malaysia. Later, we will be more collaborate, especially in study on cross-country, because the climate environment Malaysia and Tanzania quite similar. Now I am Dar es Salaam. at New University Dar es Salaam. I have some visiting. Then I see the culture in Tanzania is very good, alhamdulillah. So again, I am very sorry due to some circumstances that yesterday actually I supposed to be in your conference for World Day, but now I will be present my presentation about the development of smart irrigation and drainage system. So the meaning of this kind of smart irrigation is because of we want to make something, because of, as we know, nowadays all the material, our hazana or our properties is quite limited. Our resources is quite limited. So we must have some technique that we use just resources that we have, especially like water. As we know, water, similar like Tanzania, also like Malaysia, we have quite a lot of water from rain. So now, me and our supervisor, Professor Kualim, we try our best to apply our experience and our expertise how to get the water or collect the water from rain harvesting. As we know, water is gifted by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Rain is gifted from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Water is gifted from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So the rain is actually the rain actually is the gifted from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and then we must apply. We must do our God, then give our water, clean water from the sky. Give Allah Subhanahu wa Taala give Okay, wait, Allah SWT mentioned in Al-Quran, which is rain. Is actually with the rain, the pattern when the rain is dropped from the sky, then by the water will make the plants grow. This mentioned in Al-Quran. Only by gifted by Allah SWT, no one can be create even one drop of water like rain. Actually, rain is very Nanti dulu. Tadi, tadi waktu dulu apa? Amal. So we try to apply the water that we harvest from the gate. Then our technique is how we can make the water collected from the roof of houses, the roof of the building, and some filter or trap that we can be separate the debris, the poison that can be created in terms of chemical. Mostly we have some instrument that just pattern in our patent organization, that we have some technique that we can physically remove the debris that and trap and filter the water that we collect from the roof of housing, even roof of any building.
Lazali?
Hello?
You have a presentation of 10 minutes. Could you please go to the points and check the relevant slides?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Later on, we will be concentrate on the chemical filter. I go through. Okay, this is the picture that actually our technique of the rain harvesting is the social innovation where we apply to the community in our place. Okay, this is the picture. Then our technique, how to we collect the rainwater, especially from the stream of river, because stream of river actually we can get, but normally we get the stream of river, the water from stream river, whereas we know stream river is actually the water that available. So our technique is using the rain pump. Okay, this is the picture of the plantation, community plantation, and the technique how to bring up the water from the stream to the plantation without any energy, without any electricity. So we use the concept of the flow technique. There is a continuity of fluid flow by technique of the rain pump. This is the example of how we use the technique of we call it the impact of flow, impact of stream, that using the continuity fluid of Bernoulli. Whereas continuous flow in the stream, actually we can apply it to use the small impact, that actually we can pick up the water stream at the low position to the up position. Later on, we can blow the water stream to plantation end. Okay, this is the material, or I skip it just to get the result. Okay, this result is showing that some volume of the water stream actually we can break up without any energy. We use the energy of water stream to break up the water, just little water, but they can continuously keep the water, and later on when we take that water, then we flow it as for the irrigation purpose. Okay, this is our result, and then the conclusion said that is showing that by the flowing water volume at the right side of the chart, showing that we can get 2%, 2% water to the plantation, the 90% of flowing stream of water. This is actually the gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that we can get the sustainable water from the water stream of people to irrigate to our plantation. This is another technique how we want to have the smart tank. Whereas when we harvest the water, then we collect it into the tank. We call it the smart tank. Okay, this is the figure of how the integration of that farm. Okay, this is a picture of the system of smart tank. And this is the secret of we call it Arduino, or secret of Arduino. There is an electronic part, whereas we want to clean our tank that we collected water from rain or from the water stream of people. So, in the technique, there is a result. Okay? The functionality to remove and control the quality of water. Then the tank can have a smart system, whereas they can measure the turbidity or the debris that happen on the tank that collected from the water from the rain and the water stream. So they can automatically remove some sludge at the ground of the tank. Then they can remove smartly, meaning that there is a sensors and there is water control. So the conclusion of this is showing the reading showing that how the sensors can determine the turbidity, the sludge that happen on the smart tank. Smart tank meaning that this water from the rainwater or the water stream of the river, there is sludge because the water is from upward. They grab freely. So we have a smart tank that can remove the sludge. Meaning that the system physically remove the debris, physically remove the contamination of the water. But later on, inshallah, we will be continuous studying. Maybe you see of some point we can have the smart sensor on chemical. That means we inshallah we produce water that we collect from water stream of river or from the rainwater harvesting. Have 100% pure like water in the underground. Maybe we have some filter of vapor. Maybe we have some technique to measure. Yes, we have to measure the water, the pH water, to know the people dissolve oxygen and so on. So the conclusion is we accept goal, and I think my presentation is, I can share my slide that already sent to Project 8. I have around 40 slides actually, but I reduced it to 20 because we have screen shrinkage and we have not the time. And you can ask Project 8 for people who can contact my email here, so I can more discuss and even can get more slides that actually I want to present. Okay, thank you to all, and there is any question from the audience. And again, I thank you very much for your invitation me to present as a keynote in the delegation. Okay, thank you for the host. I deliver to the host. Any question?
Thank you so much, thanks so much. I'm inviting questions. Please stay with us for questions from members.
Okay. Okay, if no question.
I have a question to you, Hazan.
Yes.
Yeah, you said you use the rainwater harvesting systems to store the water for irrigation. But my question is, what kind of system or techniques do you use to harvest this rainwater? Another question is, you said you convey the water to the irrigation schemes without energy or electricity, but in your presentation we saw some motors and electricity stuff. Is there any contradiction? Another question is, you said you practice drainage system. Where do you convey the drained water? Thank you so much.
Okay, before responding to that, there is an additional question. You mentioned about the continuity of fluid flow model. I would like to know, is this model applicable on large-scale farming? Thank you. You can respond to the question. Thanks.
Okay, for the question one, irrigation and drainage. Actually, we collect the water from the roof of building. Normally, my house is at the Malacca, Malaysia. Our government was produced the policy. We call it irrigation policy. Irrigation policy means that all the housing have the solar panel, let's say, solar panel in their roof to get their additional electricity. So similarly, for the rain harvesting, so our policy in government in Malaysia, they have, for all the housing, they have their gutter. Gutter means that they're collecting the water from the roof of house when raining. Then at the gutter, then the outlet of the gutter will be storage to the underground tank. Then after that, we can reuse the water that we collected to irrigation. Actually, our water tank is used for irrigation. Normally, rainwater is now we use for the not for the consumer, but we use it for something like for irrigation, for washing our cars, and so on. So later, we have some sensors that we can have some chemical process. So later on, our water will be produced purely. For the physical filter, we have some technique that we have some mesh. Mesh meaning that we have the filter to avoid some debris of physical contamination from the water that we collect from the roof, and only they will be track the physical contamination, but the water will be flowing into the storage. Okay, for the third question, actually, I think my answer is cover all the question, correct? Because this is our technique. How we want to. I see even in Tanzania when the rain is happened. I saw there is a guttering. There is a gutter. Guttering that there is in any building there is a gutter that collect water from the roof. But at the outlet they don't put any storage. So I suggest maybe we can more collaboration on our research. We call it smart tank. I already mentioned to Jabir that we already patent on smart tank water harvesting, that we can be implement more to how we want to have the water sustainable resources, whereas actually this is from our. Okay? Any question? Or you agree with my answers?
Yeah, this is enough. We very much appreciate for the responses. Thanks so much. Wait for a few announcements.
Okay, I want to take some quick roll call to check who's around and who's not around. And also you're still around. And then you'll be the first presenter after the break, and then we have Eliacha. Isiacha, yes. Will be the second presenter. Klaus will be the third one. Fourth will be Wilson. And now let me check on these other people whom we did not get to know whether they're around. Mongi, Ali Hatib, Furaha Rashid, Samji, Stella Casey, Eliza Lupenza, Eliza, Flora Kajuna, Fred Mloy, George Makingi, Charles Elias, Digna Swai, Gwandu, Nyangi, Gwandu again, Alex Wenati,
Yes.
Nyangi C, Yasin Tabeda. Okay, the four will present first and then the rest will tell you, the rest will follow. Thank you. We'll go for tea break and it will be 20 minutes and let's be back so that you know today's the last day and we have to, whoever's around, what we need him or her to present. It will be very unjust for somebody not to present, you know. So please let's just have the tea quickly and come back for the next session. And let's now clap for the presenters and all those who participated. Thank you very much. Let's enjoy the health break. And thank you, Dr. George. Let's clap also for Dr. George. And Dr. Nyaruch also. Okay, guys, let's enjoy our tea break and come back after 20 minutes.